In this tutorial, we're going to talk about margins and padding, which are two of the most essential styling controls for Shogun. Alright, so let's get started. I'm going to start off by dropping some elements on a page. Go ahead and drop some columns on a page. And right below those columns, I am going to drop an image. And you'll notice that these two things are right on top of each other. And the way that we give space between elements in Shogun is with margins. So here I can click on either of them, but I'll go ahead and click on columns. I'll go over to margins. And what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to type in 50, and it puts 50 pixels of margin between this image and this column. And it also puts 50 pixels of margin between this column and the top of the body of the page. Alright, so that's what margins are. Pretty simple, right? Okay, well what about padding? What is padding? Because it behaves similarly in margins to some way, but differently in others. So here, I'll give you the example by dragging and dropping a text element into one of these columns. I'm going to type text a bunch of times, and there you go. You see we have this text element in one of these columns. If I apply padding to this on the left and right hand side, let's see what it does. Put 15 pixels of padding on the left and right, and what happened? It pushed that text in. And that was just a little bit of padding, so let me show it a little more drastically. There it is with 25, okay? So padding pushes content inside of an element. So there you can see I put now padding on the top and bottom as well as the left and the right, and that text is now getting pushed deeper inside of the text element. Okay. So that is what padding is. Padding pushes, it creates space within an element itself, and margins pushes an element away from other elements. Now, here are some very important things to note about margins and padding because you want to be careful. I'm going to start off by giving a new example. I'm just going to delete these two elements out real quick. I'm going to drag and drop some columns onto a page. And I am also going to drop a button onto the page. Alright, and I'll create a little space between them, of course, by using margins. So there, create space between the two elements by using margins. Now, let's say I wanted to make this button smaller. What I could do is I could come over here and I could put a whole bunch of margin on each side, right? I could put like, let's see, 300 pixels of margin on each side of this button. And there, hey, it's looking pretty good, right? However, look at what happens when we go down to smaller screens. That margin absolutely crushes our button into oblivion. So we want to be a little careful because margins and padding can have that effect if you use them too much. Now a better thing would be to take this columns, right? Dial the number of columns up to 3. Go ahead and we're going to remove these margins and we're going to drop that button into the middle column. And there, look at, we have a very nice sized button. Now when I toggle on over to mobile, it looks pretty good on this screen, right? But let's say that these columns were actually in a full width box. There, we're faced with another problem, right? Now the button is touching both sides. So what do we need? We need a little bit of margins, but we don't need so much that it crushes the button. So here we can just go ahead and we can put 20 pixels of margins on the left and right. The button's looking great across all screen sizes. Okay. So that in a nutshell is how to use margins and padding. They're used for creating space between elements in the instance of margins, and they're also used for pushing content further into the element in the case of padding. One more illustration, you'll notice that all buttons actually come with padding on them by default to push that text inside of the button. So here you can just see the way that padding works. If we were to remove and then add padding, you can see what impact it has. It moves things further into the element, either further down or further up or further left or further right. If you have any questions about margins and padding, or any questions about any of Shogun's styling controls, you can email us at support@getshogun.com. Thanks.